Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado video. Today, I'm joined by Michael Vance, Legislative Director for the Libertarian Party of Colorado. Michael and myself hosted legislative live streams during the entire 2024 legislative session. Well, Michael, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brandon. It's exciting to be here.
Well, Michael, yeah, it's good to have you back. We had so much fun. I mean, almost every single week this year during the legislative session. I mean, it was a marathon going over all the bills being heard in committee, talking about how people could get involved, what they could do to have their voice heard down at the state capitol. So I'm really happy to talk to you again, and this time we have a little bit different topic.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see some of the stuff that went through this year during legislative session, and hopefully we get to have the final say on striking it down.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of ballot initiatives that were put on the ballot by the state legislature. So we'll definitely be talking about that today. So we're going to be talking about the ballot initiatives, of course, here in 2024. Really important election, as always. This is going to probably set a record in terms of 14 initiatives, 14 statewide initiatives, amendments, propositions, whatever you want to call them, that Colorado voters will be deciding upon this year. I mean, it's a massive undertaking. So hopefully we can provide some information to people out there, help them understand these initiatives and understand the pro-liberty perspective in terms of voting yes or no on these.
Absolutely. I took a look at my sample ballot a couple days ago because Colorado does give you the option to take a look at that if you would choose to. And I had 39 different questions from ballot initiatives, judges, the president, all the way down to local level races. So there's a lot for people to choose from, and it's going to take Coloradans some time to fill out their ballot this year. So I'm excited to get into the meat and potatoes of this.
Awesome. Perfect. So we're at freestatecolorado.com/2024 dash ballot. Every year, Free State Colorado puts out a ballot guide, really specifically about the initiatives, not really talking about candidates, but really just the initiatives that people across Colorado are facing. So let's go ahead and jump in here. As people know, they have until Tuesday, November 5th by 7 p.m. to drop off your ballot at your local county drop box. I'm sure we're going to see record turnout this year. There's going to be a lot of really excited people to vote one way or the other, especially in a presidential year. So people can't forget about how important these initiatives are there at the
Abs-
at the state level.
Absolutely. Since you brought up election day being 7 p.m. being the drop off, one thing I do want to bring up is a lot of people bring up the controversial issue of um, ballot harvesting. In Colorado, it's actually legal for an individual to take up to 10 ballots to the ballot box. So if you have a friend or a neighbor who just really does not want to fill out their ballot, go ahead and let them know you're happy to help out. All they have to do is fill it out, and you're happy to take it to the ballot box for them. And that way they can have their ballot counted, and hopefully you can get a good word in or two about how maybe somebody should vote, because you never know who might be that undecided voter. And while there's a lot of elections that may go heavily the wrong way, there are always a few elections or ballot questions that are a little bit closer than you might realize. And sometimes that one or two votes that you turn in your favor could be the deciding factor in a positive outcome for your local area or the state of Colorado itself.
Yeah, 100%. Great point. Good to bring that up. So a person, from what I understand, can bring 10 ballots to the ballot box to turn in, but that's it, right? Not 10, just 10 ballots overall total, right? They can't do 10 ballots over and over again. Is that correct?
I believe that's the case. And I know some of the shady stuff that's gone on in other states is people picking up 300 ballots at a time and taking them off to the ballot box. That's something you cannot do. And if you are seeing something like that, make sure to report it, because that's definitely election interference, and it's going to be a massive problem for our country if that's going on here in Colorado. So please let the people who call this state the gold standard of elections know if you see anything going on, because we need to make sure that our elections are fair.
Yeah, good point. 100%. 100%. So we're going to start with the amendments to the state constitution that people will be voting on this year. Now, this one especially was referred by the state legislature. So it's something we probably talked about back during our legislative live stream earlier this year. And just to point out too, amendments to the state constitution do require 55% of the voters to approve the message or the measure, excuse me. So that's an important distinction between the propositions, where it's just a simple majority of the 50% plus one vote, really. So, Amendment G, modify property tax exemption for veterans with disabilities. Michael, what do you think about this one?
I like the idea of it. I really do. Now, the goal of this is to give people specific tax exemptions, and as libertarians, we know and love the phrase "taxation is theft." So the idea of giving people more of their money back is also fantastic. But there's a key catch in this: the more money we give back is at the expense of everybody, all the other taxpayers in this great state of Colorado, because it comes from the Tabor bucket. The more money for this homestead exemption is that we give out to some people, the less money that other individuals are going to be able to get back in their Tabor refunds. And right now, as we know, it's about 25% harder to get groceries than it was about 4 years ago. We can thank our wonderful masters over at the Federal Reserve for that, and our federal government. But that's another topic for another time. It's so I have a real hard time saying yes on this overall, because those people are also getting taxed as well. So just because me myself could get something hypothetically exempted so I don't have to pay less taxes, that doesn't mean it's necessarily right to take it from other people as well. So I'd rather see, I, while I want to say yes on this, I will say no because of Tabor. Now, if Tabor wasn't around, I might say something different. That might change my mind. Thank God we have Tabor still in this state. Um, but yeah, I'm going to be a no vote on this one.
Oh, wow. A little surprised to hear you say that. I can completely understand that, though. I was a little hesitant in putting this guide together, but I think it's going to pass. I think Amendment G is going to pass. I probably will be voting for it. I think people are anxious to lower property taxes. In Colorado, property taxes have increased dramatically over the years. So allowing basically another 3,700 Colorado veterans to have a cut in their property taxes is a real winning issue. I think this is going to pass with flying colors because of that. There was no legislators at the state legislature back in 2023 when this was put on the ballot or when this was passed during that resolution, House Resolution 1002 back in 2023. So people can go to freestatecolorado.com, find the ballot guide if you want to learn more about how the homestead exemption works. But I think you definitely brought up a great point here, is that we don't pay state property taxes in Colorado. All our property taxes go to our counties, our municipalities, our special districts. School districts is included in a special district, so it stays local. So it's kind of interesting in my mind that the state government, of course, plays politics with our local property tax money. So not too surprising that they're going to reimburse local governments across Colorado to the tune of $2.8 million per year. Because yeah, they're going to lower. It's not a clean property tax cut, right? I think we both agree. If this was a clean property tax cut, then yeah, 100% voted for it, completely. But unfortunately, that $2.8 million is going to come from the state government, from their Tabor Taxpayers Bill of Rights surplus, go to backfill those local governments, so they don't lose any money out of this. So, it's just a shame that way. I was definitely kind of on the fence as well about it. But I think overall, it's more of a win for Liberty than it is a loss in on some level. So, Free State Colorado hesitantly recommends a yes vote.
Yeah, and I completely understand anybody who does vote for this one, because um, I want to see as many people as possible not have to pay pay taxes if they don't have to. Um, so
Right.
yeah,
And and I know a lot of people out there, if you're going to give a break to any special interest group, why not make it disabled veterans? Of course, this is only going to veterans who are qualified as not being able to work by the Department of Veterans Affairs. So, if there's anybody out there who's um, deserving of a tax cut, I think that most Coloradans would agree that that's this group of people. So, Um, there's Amendment G for you, folks. Love to see what you think in the comments. Let us know if there's anybody who opposes Amendment G, like Michael here. It would be very interesting to hear your line of thought as well. Perfect. Well, now we're on to Amendment H, Judicial Discipline Procedure and Confidentiality. I just want to preface this one real quick, and then I want to hear what you think, Michael. But there were some scandals in the Colorado court system over the last few years, some judges doing really improper things, and there was just a lack of accountability. That's why this is on the ballot, really. The state legislature it recognized there was a problem in Colorado's judicial system with judges and Supreme Court justices even abusing their role. There's a lot of controversy there. There's some really interesting articles out there if you're interested about it. It kind of went underreported for the most part. But back in 2023, the legislature thought, hey, here's an opportunity to do something to create a little bit more accountability in the judicial branch. So that's the genesis of this. But Michael, what do you think about Amendment H?
I think there is a problem with our judicial system. I really like the idea of this thing. And the problem's been gone on for a fairly long time. I know a while back there was a movement to just vote all the judges out. Everybody would just vote no, no matter what. Um, the problem is there are occasionally good judges. Justice Gorsuch is from Colorado, so while we're voting no on all the judges, we're also voting against Judge Gorsuch. And Judge Gorsuch, as we know, he became Justice Gorsuch, who's a part of today's Supreme Court. So, in fact, I would say he's probably one of the best. There's good things Trump did. There's bad things Trump did. I would say one of the best things Trump did was appoint Justice Gorsuch. Neil Gorsuch was a fantastic pick, and I'm not such a big fan of his other two picks, but Justice Gorsuch was phenomenal in my opinion. So, um, I think we need a better way to um, judge the judges, make sure judicial discipline is a how do I say this? I want to make sure that the judges are held to a high standard and there's no room for malfeasance because there's nothing because at the end of the day, our judges are absolutely crucial to a free society and their impartiality and making sure that they are treating cases fairly. And otherwise, we're going to have a lot of problems within our state if we don't have proper judicial practice. I'll say. So, yeah.
No, that's a great point because so often we see abuses by the executive branch, the legislative branch, of course, here in Colorado, as we talk about so often. But to see, we have that final recourse of the courts, right? The courts can kind of, as we saw, dismiss cases that are unconstitutional, kind of push back on the legislature, kind of be that check and balance, that third branch of government that is so often not talked about in normal political discourse. So yeah, I think the judicial system maybe is ripe for reform. I'd love to get a little bit more information out there about this, but I would say I think it's an interesting idea to create this independent judicial discipline commission and the judicial discipline adjudicative board to hold these judges accountable. Because right now, if there's a complaint, there's not really a great process, it seems, to hold these justices accountable and do anything about it. Really, I mean, they can kind of get away with whatever they want, is what it seems to me, at least. So this board, if Amendment H passes, it'll create this board, 4 judges selected by the Supreme Court, 2 attorneys appointed by the governor and approved by the Senate, and 4 citizens appointed by the governor and approved by the Senate. And those 4 citizens can't be lawyers. They can't be, practicing in Colorado. They just have to be regular people, maybe professors or something. I don't know. It'd be very interesting to see who they pick. But nonetheless, the only concern I have, you have 10 people who now have a lot of power over the career of one judge. So if there's a judge they don't like, I get it. If the Supreme Court's out to get against them, the governor and the Senate, they appoint their little lackeys. Potentially, I'm playing the devil's advocate here, kind of worst case scenario. You can see how these 10 people could potentially create some major problem if you had a really good judge that was just maybe going against the grain. So that's the only concern I have. Having the governor appoint the majority of the members of this board. But nonetheless, another check and balance in our system here. Of course, these things are going to be public. So you're going to have a new organization out there in the judicial branch that's really going to be vocal about how the judges are behaving and presenting another opportunity to really hold them to account for any misdeeds. So slight hesitation there, but I would say Free State Colorado recommends a yes vote. How about yourself, Michael? What do you think?
I agree. I'd be a yes vote as well. I mean, they can definitely do some tweaking. I mean, as you say, the governor appointing four random people. I mean, who are those four random people? That can definitely be a problem. But overall, I definitely think we need some sort of uh we need somebody to watch our judges.
Yep. Yep. I agree with you there. So perfect. Any other thoughts on Amendment H, or we can move on to Amendment I?
Uh, let's go ahead and check out Amendment I.
Perfect. So Amendment I is constitutional bail exception for first degree murder. Now, this is another state legislature led amendment. So they passed this earlier this year. And I know we talked about this one. I do remember that. And they put this amendment on the ballot here. So it was very interesting. I kind of pointed out, I wanted to see the voting record. So there was actually 5 legislators who voted against this bill back during the legislative session. Rod Bockenfeld, Elizabeth Epps, Lorena Garcia, Tim Hernandez, Javier Marbury. So kind of some of those more of the social justice type legislators, a couple like Tim Hernandez, Elizabeth Epps, who will not be returning, but of course of the same vein of as these other Democratic socialists who were very anti-death penalty, of course, but also anti-imprisonment, anti-life in prison, that kind of thing. So interesting amendment here. The way the Colorado Constitution is written, it kind of created a loophole that when the legislature repealed the death penalty in 2020, they inadvertently created a situation in which bail could not be denied to murder suspects. Currently, bail can only be denied to those accused of a capital crime, a capital offense, which means death penalty. And since Colorado doesn't have any capital crimes anymore, that means you can definitely get bail for no matter what you do. So very interesting piece of legislation here that turned into this amendment. I think with Colorado's crime being so bad in recent years, I expect the majority of voters here in Colorado, I'm sure, will pass this. It'll be interesting to see. I can't imagine that it's not going to pass with the 55% vote. But what do you think about this one, Michael?
I think I definitely don't want to see first degree murderers walking around, especially around our streets. I think we've got enough problems with violent crime in Colorado as it is. We don't need to see first degree murderers roaming the streets. So I agree. I'm a yes vote.
Gotcha. I mean, now, of course, somebody could be falsely accused. It does happen, right? Somebody could be
Hmm.
accused of committing first degree murder and then later proven to be innocent. So, there is that, of course, possibility that some innocent person can get caught up in this. And because they're not able to get bail, it could hurt them in their ability to prove their innocence, something along those lines. So there's always that risk, right? Anytime you're arresting people and putting them in jail and doing this. But I think I agree with you for sure that the risk is better than the alternative, that the benefit from keeping people accused of first degree murder in jail for the trial is probably a good thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the great thing about our system is you're innocent until proven guilty, so you do have the opportunity to stand trial and have a jury of your peers. That's incredibly important. So that way, if somebody is unfairly charged, they have the opportunity to state their case and they just don't go to jail for life, for example. Um, but that's why we have trials. So I am grateful that we have that opportunity, but in the meantime, majority of the people who are charged with first degree murder committed a act that was worthy of the charge of first degree murder. So I don't want to see these people on the streets when Colorado is going through the issues with violent crime that it is right now.
Gotcha. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I think this is going to pass with flying colors out there. Be curious to see if anybody has other reasons to oppose this this amendment here. So let's move on to Amendment J, repealing the definition of marriage in the state constitution. So this was another one from this year that the legislature put on. It's more of a symbolic gesture in my mind. It's not going to really have any effect on state law. So they want to remove one line from the Constitution What's interesting, this only requires a simple majority to pass, unlike the other amendments that need 55%, since it's not adding anything to the Constitution, it's removing something, it only needs that 51%. I thought that was really interesting. So the line they want to remove from the state constitution is, quote, only a union of one man and one woman shall be valid or recognized as a marriage in this state. So they want to remove that. If this passes, that will be removed from the state constitution. What's your thoughts, Michael?
I honestly don't think it's that big of a deal. State law also contradicts this line inside the state constitution anyway, as well as Supreme Court decisions and federal decisions that have been made via federal law. So to me, this is more or less like a little bit of a virtue signal. So I really am neutral on this one. I mean, I'm not going to be super for it. I'm not going to be super against it. To me, it just doesn't really matter. So I'm just a neutral on this one. I probably won't even vote on it.
Oh, interesting. Of course, there's people out there with concerns from a religious perspective, and I totally understand and respect that. But from a pure liberty perspective, we're talking about libertarian philosophy here. Of course, I think we'd all agree the state should have no say on the marriage between consenting adults. So, really, just removing that one line from the state constitution where the state has one less thing to control or one less kind of mechanism by which to tell people what they can and cannot do. From a pro liberty perspective, I feel like that people should vote yes on that. But of course, no disrespect towards anybody who holds contrary beliefs that doesn't want to vote on this one.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, if we are going to really do something from a liberty perspective, we would really change our laws to kind of take marriage um out of the government's hands whatsoever. I mean, what I do with my life is not the government's business. It's truly a civil and social issue. It has nothing to do with the government itself. Who I live with, who I sleep with, as long as I'm doing it consensually and non-violently, the government should not have any part of it. So, but that's not what this is. This is more of a virtue signal. So, yeah, I'm a neutral.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, let's move on here to Amendment K, modify constitutional election deadlines. So again, our state legislature, they were busy this year as they often are, passing concurrent resolution 002, putting this to extend the deadlines or actually shorten the deadlines for certain people, which is the public, and extend the deadlines really for the clerks and the workers in these offices by giving them this extra week or extra period of time in which they can get the information together for the elections. So really, just briefly, this would just change, quote, this is from the Legislative Council staff off the fiscal note. Deadlines for filing initiative petitions, referendum petitions, and declaration of intent for judges and justices will all be moved up 1 week. Under current law, nonpartisan research staff publish the text and titles of ballot measures at least 15 days before an election. This resolution extends that period to 45 days. So, from my perspective, from what I understand, it's county clerks, Secretary of State, they just want more time. They want to give their staff a better ability to do their job, and that's the purpose behind this. What are your thoughts, Michael?
I like the idea of giving, staff more time to fulfill their duties. I have no problem with that. My concern is when you take away the right to petition and place ballot petitions, and one of the ways you could do that is by limiting time for people to get the proper amount of signatures. One thing, considering this is a concurrent resolution from the Senate. That means it's not coming. This is not something that's done by the people, but it's done by the people with power. One thing I've noticed about a lot of the people in power, not saying everybody, but there is a definite group of people in power that think they know better than the people that elected them to their offices. And I would say that these people want to be the ones in power. They're the ones that want to make the decisions, and they want to make it just a little bit harder for you to uh, make your voice heard. So I think this is a power move on their part, and we need to push back. If they want to give if they want to give people more time to make sure their ballots are good on a county level or a on the state level, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't shorten the time that that you have to um, petition. That's a huge issue. So um, I'm a no.
Completely agree with you there. It's hard enough to get something on the ballot now. You need so many signatures. So many of them get thrown out of these signatures, right? If they're not perfect, they don't count. So for an individual citizen or group of citizens out there who want to exercise their rights here in Colorado to get something on the ballot to put in front of their community to vote on, they should not be penalized. It should not be harder for them to do so. If anything, we should be passing laws to make it easier for citizens to get things on the ballot. I mean, that's true democracy right there. Yeah, this is a bad piece of legislation, a bad amendment in my mind. Citizens shouldn't suffer if these Secretary of State or county clerks aren't able to complete their duties, or if it's a little bit harder on them, then maybe figure out another way. But adjusting that timeline, I don't think is fair for people here. And a lot of people don't realize how good Coloradans have it when it comes to petitioning. We have the ability to do statewide petitions, like we're going to see here soon. Not every state has that, and not every state makes it easy. Colorado, it's not easy, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot easier than other places. And we have some good opportunity for citizens to participate in their government, and that's something we really need to strengthen and expand upon. So I would say, definitely a no on Amendment K. Definitely recommend a no vote there. All right, perfect. Well, let's take a look here at Amendment 79. I don't know about you, Michael, but I've been seeing some commercials and ads on this one, and they're so deceptive in terms of what they're trying to sell to the voting public here. They don't mention, in my mind, the most important part about it. But for those who don't know, Amendment 79, they're calling it the constitutional right to abortion. Of course, Colorado is one of the most has some of the loosest abortion laws in the entire country, and they want to enshrine our pro-abortion laws into the state constitution. So, what do you think about this one, Michael?
Yeah, I'm a definite no vote on this. I mean, I'm one of those people that views the nap as something that doesn't just start at I don't believe the nap starts at childbirth. I think it starts at the point that you're a viable human being. So I have a real problem with what this is doing.
And just real quick, just for people who don't know, the NAP is the non-aggression principle. It's one of the most
Thank
important
you.
libertarian axioms. This idea of just don't aggress against anybody, don't hurt them, don't commit an act of aggression against them. That's the NAP, the NAP, non-aggression principle. It's a really important libertarian principle. So sorry to interrupt you there, Michael. Just making
Oh,
sure people got it.
no, I appreciate it because there's times when I forget to say what the nap means or try to explain a acronym or something like that. So I appreciate that. Appreciate the you catching that. So yeah, I mean, I think that there are some real issues with this. I think and I know a lot of libertarians are very much pro-choice people, and I completely understand that where they're coming from, particularly the idea of eviction from Walter Block raises. But that's just how I personally view this issue. I also and what I have the biggest problem with this is they want to use state funds to support abortion. So you're taking something that somebody has a moral issue with and then stealing their money from them and then doing that exact act they find absolutely abhorrent. So I have a real problem with that. Another guy that you and I both know, Scott Shamblin, who does some great videos at the Capitol during legislative session season. And not only that, but he's done some pretty great videos at some other city councils during legislative sessions off season as well. He's doing a lot with Amendment 79 to raise awareness and a lot of the issues with what they're planning to do with Amendment 79. So I would recommend looking into what Scott's doing as well. But yeah, I am a no on this one.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I'll be a no as well. They're so deceptive in terms of this ballot measure, because, like you said, it's to enshrine this constitutional right. But really, really, what they're trying to amend in our state constitution is eliminating the prohibition on taxpayer funds from being used for abortions. So right now, Colorado Constitution states that taxpayer money cannot be used to fund abortions. That's why Amendment 79 is on the ballot, is to repeal that. So it's absolutely egregious. Whatever you think about abortion, the idea that forcing people to pay it with their stolen tax money is just, I mean, it's just as evil as it gets, really. And so
Absolutely.
this, yeah, this so the citizen-led initiative. This is the first one we've seen where it's not referred by the state legislature. So they had to get 124,632 valid signatures from Colorado voters. I'm sure everybody saw outside of the grocery stores this summer and earlier this year, where people were out there. These were some of those people. I did kind of a little bit of a deep dive on this one because when I was doing some research, it was really the money. It was following the money that really opened my eyes to a lot of what this measure is about. So there's Dusty Garul and Danny Newsom were kind of the two people leading this, the two designated representatives, according to the Colorado Secretary of State. That's the Colorado Organization for Latina Opportunity and Reproductive Rights, Color, and Cobalt, which is two big pro-abortion groups here in Colorado. What I thought was really interesting, this Color group, you can actually look on the Colorado State website called TOPS, which is where you could track a lot of this money. And they've actually received $10,000 in taxpayer money from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Now, it doesn't say exactly what that money goes to, why they gave them this money. I'm sure that information is available to somebody. But nonetheless, one of these groups that's really behind this measure uh, is getting taxpayer funded money somewhere. So I mean that's another really red flag of how connected some of this is and how bad it is. So the committee they formed is Coloradans for Protecting Reproductive Freedom. All these are hyperlinks at freestatecolorado.com so people can dig in further if they'd like. They've raised over $5.5 million. $5.5 million for this. It's absolutely crazy. And who are some of these bigger donors? So no surprise there. I know this is a little. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for people. Let's see, there we go. So Cobalt Advocates, that's one of the pro-abortion groups, has given $1 million, $1 million. Oh my gosh, to this committee here to push this. And you have to wonder, is Cobalt, are they going to make money off of this? Are they going to make tax? Are they going to somehow get taxpayer money from these taxpayer funded abortions if this passes? Is this just an investment they're making? You have to wonder. Now, this was
Yeah.
interesting. We have the Open Society Policy Center. Now, do you know much about these guys, Michael?
I do. I mean, there's some of the worst possible people to be meddling around in Colorado.
So for
I
the
believe they are
Yeah,
Soros people, right? It's Soros's
yep,
group.
100%. I was going to say, for those who don't know, the Open Society is George Soros's, philanthropic organization there. So this is, I mean, as much as
Philanthropic.
people, right, as much as people complain or like, people are like, oh, George Soros, this, George Soros, that. I mean, this is literally his organization. Literally, the George Soros connected group here. His group is from New York. Spent $1 million into this initiative for this taxpayer funded abortion bill. I mean, absolutely crazy. I mean, it's as bad as it gets. Moving down the list here, another $750,000 from Michael Bloomberg, the former authoritarian New York governor or mayor, excuse me, and also a busybody who wants to get everybody's business. Institute for Responsive Government Action, Inc., out of Chicago. We'll look at them real quick. Lynn Schusterman, which I wasn't familiar with before, and then the list goes on there. So kind of interesting group. There we are.
I
But those are some. Yeah, go ahead.
I like how you've got Cobalt Advocates at the top giving 1 million, but then you go back down, you see Cobalt Foundation giving 345,000. And then if you go down a little bit more, you can see another Cobalt Advocates giving 240. Oh, and then there's another Cobalt Foundation giving 240. So very odd how Cobalt is able to give and give and give just because they have more than one 527.
Well,
So
it'd
they're
be
really
yeah.
playing games.
Definitely. It'd be really interesting to see where their money's coming from because I'm sure the foundation is probably a 501(c)(3), which means it's the dark money group that people rail against so often, which means their donors are anonymous and they can give lots of money to these issue committees, to these other organizations. So there's so much money coming out of Cobalt. It's absolutely crazy. A million. I mean, how much money do they have just on this one issue of abortion? Like, that's their thing. How much money is tied up in this is absolutely mind boggling.
And for Democrats in an extremely abortion friendly state, can raise so much money on abortion by scaring people constantly about somebody losing the ability to terminate the life of the pregnancy, we'll
Well, I
say.
mean, yeah, 100%. And so much so where you're getting $1 million from George Soros, $750,000 from Bloomberg. I mean, another $500,000 from this Lynn Shusterman. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. So I kind of detail it here. People can click the links if they want to see for themselves. But the Open Society Policy Center is George Soros' organization. The Institute for Responsive Government, I've actually had heard of before, but they're a left-wing dark money group, according to Influence Watch. People can click those links, and they're really supportive of Colorado's automatic voter registration schemes. If you click on their website, they talk about how great Colorado is at automatically registering voters. It's very interesting to see that these same people who are trying to get everybody automatically registered to vote are also spending big money to get abortions taxpayer funded here in Colorado. The shut,
Absolutely.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, you bring up automatic automatic voter registration. I mean, a lot of times people are running into a lot of issues with that because, excuse me, because a lot of people are not necessarily eligible to vote, and yet they're getting signed up to vote as signed up to vote in Colorado. So earlier we talked about a fair election for our state. There's nothing fair about that, and then people are going to start questioning the fabric of the Colorado government itself because they want to do things like automatic voter registration and then people question you and call you a bigot and racist just because you're saying, "Hey, there's some legitimate problems with doing something like this." So,
Yeah,
yeah.
interesting to see it's the same group of people behind it. You know what I mean? It's the
Hmm.
same group of people everywhere. It really makes you question some of the motivations, right?
Absolutely.
So what was interesting, I hadn't really heard of this Susterman lady, Lynn, but their family has donated nearly, because you could type in the last name on Tracer. Colorado Secretary of State website has Tracer, which you can look at all the campaign finances. So all the publicly available information. Shusterman family has donated nearly $3 million in support of ballot measures in Colorado elections over the years. Now this this blew my mind. Shusterman here is part of the Rothschild family, according to Wikipedia. So you could click into her Wikipedia entry. That's her maiden name. She's part of the Rothschild dynasty. So here we have George Soros, the Rothschilds, Michael Bloomberg, all these people pumping millions of dollars into Colorado, the most pro-abortion state in the country, to get more pro-abortion things passed. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
Oh, absolutely. And a while, I think this was about a year or so ago when Biden was running for re-election. He came to Colorado and threw a fundraiser. And you know what the fundraiser was about? Abortion. He was raising money in Colorado on abortion of all things. The probably the most safest topic for the Democrats is abortion, and yet that's what he's coming to raise money on and scaring people. So I
Well,
just thought
and
that
it's
was
interesting.
interesting.
It is very interesting. And if you see all these campaign ads where you're getting stuff in the mail, which everybody has, or what you're seeing on TV or on YouTube or wherever, it's all about abortion. I mean, that's the only thing the Democrats really have to run on. Like, hey, I know we know that this is the most pro-abortion state in the country, but we're going to keep talking about abortion. That's it. That's real. That's their only campaign message. I mean, it's absolutely wild that that's like their only thing they have. Uh, what's in
Yeah.
Yeah, what's interesting, this Shusterman, she's also a top donor of Florida's pro-abortion ballot measure this year. So she's given $5 million to Florida to get their abortion bill passed. And she's currently this year the biggest political donor in Oklahoma, according to Tulsa World. So she has put so much money in Oklahoma politics in Florida. And I believe last year, if I'm not mistaken, she pumped a bunch of money into Ohio for their pro-abortion measure. So all of a sudden we have this Rothschild person pumping millions and millions of dollars into states across the country to get pro-abortion stuff passed. I mean, it's absolutely wild.
Oh yeah. It's amazing. She's trying to become the next George Soros.
Yeah, yeah, definitely one of those people for sure, a social engineer. There's another
Yes.
group here, which we didn't mention previously, but this Alliance for Youth Organizing. I mean, you could just tell by the name kind of what they're about. I was based out of Washington, D.C., but they gave $250,000 back in April of this year to this Coloradans for protecting reproductive freedom. Well, who are they? I've actually written about them before. Wrote about them last year, I believe it was, if maybe it was 2 years ago. Wow, now wow, but they are a Washington D.C. based organization. I wrote about them on New Era Colorado. New Era Colorado is one of those groups that has helped turn Colorado into this Democratic stronghold. They are part of the blueprint. Jared Polis connection, Joe Neguse. I mean, the connections go on and on. Brittany Pedersen. I mean, there's so many connections. Steve Fenberg, all these names from Colorado politics, people who are some of the most powerful political or politicians here on the Democratic side in Colorado currently, all came out of New Era, Colorado. I mean, it's a big group, very, very interesting. Their foundation has received $500,000 from Coloradans for protecting reproductive freedom during this campaign. So that's foundation is 501c3, which means it's a tax write-off basically, but it's a dark money type of entity. So they're paying for something. So it's interesting. You see this whole thing where you have Bloomberg and Soros and Rothschild family coming in, giving money to this group. Then, there's this other group from Washington, D.C. gives money to the same group, and then they also pay this same group, is get funneling money over to this other group. I mean, this money is just insane amounts, just cycling through all these different entities. It's absolutely wild.
Oh yeah. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned the blueprint. I mean, it all started here in Colorado, the way that all these different uh groups coordinate with each other.
Oh,
It's
definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a big club, right? It's like a big club. What's interesting, I was like, well, I want to learn more about this Alliance for Youth Organizing. So I did a quick internet search, and
Hmm.
their office space in Washington. So found their address on their website, typed it into Google. What's their office space at? Well, there's other groups, as you could expect, all these other left-wing kind of dark money groups. The Center for Employment Justice shares office space with them. And then a group called Circuit Media. Circuit Media, is a marketing company, it appears. They actually have an office in Colorado as well. So then that kind of raised my suspicion there. I said, okay, they share a group, an office with this group who's giving money to Colorado organizations. They also have an office in Colorado. There's got to be some sort of connection there. There has to be, right?
Hmm.
So I looked at Circuit Media here in the Colorado website to track state spending. So the Circuit Media group that shares an office space with this left-wing dark money group in Washington, D.C. has received $424,000 from the state of Colorado this year, just in 2024. So I mean, like it's like how tied together it is. Of course, you can't necessarily prove anything, but like they're getting taxpayer money to $400,000. The group that they share an office with just donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to these other Colorado groups who's then giving money over to here. And it's like, is some of this coming from taxpayers? It makes me wonder. And you can actually see here's the proof where Circuit Media LLC is getting all of this money from the state government. I mean, it's all tracked on the state website. Links are there. What's interesting is where most of this money is coming from is the executive director's office of the Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing. Now that's interesting. They've spent over $377,000 to Circuit Media for these personal services professional that they're giving massive checks. Now, are they doing marketing for this Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy? Is it about abortion? What is it about? I don't know, but very, very interesting. The lady who's the head, Kim Bimfister, is the executive director. She's been a part of the governor's candidate in 2018. So that's a Hickenlooper era, continued through the Polis era, and then a president at Cigna for 15 years. So, I mean, how connected these people are, how much money is behind the scenes moving around. I mean, I feel like I really wanted to dive into this because I feel like it tells more of the story that we don't hear every day in normal political discourse. We don't really see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff of hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions of dollars moving between these different entities. It's hard to track. Some of them are getting taxpayer money. Some of them are funneling it through Washington, D.C. Who knows what's going on? But nonetheless, I felt like it was a really compelling and interesting kind of explanation here of how politics really works.
It's pretty disgusting to see that our own taxpayer money that they've taken from us without our consent is going to these different going to these different dark money groups. It's insane. You would think somebody should be in jail for that, but no.
Right. And it's hard to prove where the money's going. Just the fact that they share an office does, share an address, I get, doesn't prove that they're the same entity, but nonetheless, they're all playing in Colorado politics, connected to the Colorado government. They share the same office space in Washington, D.C. I mean, you have to wonder, right? You just have to wonder.
Yeah, I think somebody needs to look into this a little bit more because it's extremely concerning.
There's so much of this out there. It's crazy. Just looking at the measure real quick, getting away from that financing part. I brought this up here that it does seem unnecessary, right? Colorado's the loosest abortion laws in the country. I mean, literally in Colorado, a pregnant woman can have an abortion at any stage of her pregnancy, including immediately before the baby is due. So if the baby's due the next day, that same day, she can go have it aborted before. Even though it can survive outside the womb, she can still have it aborted, terminated, and move on with her life. So it's like, why? Colorado has such loose abortion laws. Why would these advocates spend that money? Well, here's the actual text of the amendment. This is actually what we're voting on, which, most people never really read the entire thing because it's not always apparent. The very last line and the fine print at the very bottom is section 3 of this amendment. In the Constitution of the state of Colorado, repeal section 50 of Article 5. So I kind of blew that up here. Now, what is that? What is Article 5, Section 50 of the Colorado Constitution state? Quote, no public funds shall be used by the state of Colorado, its agencies, or political subdivisions to pay or otherwise reimburse, either directly or indirectly, any person, agency, or facility for the performance of any induced abortion, provided, however, that the General Assembly by specific, and then it goes on and on. But you can clearly see it's prohibiting the public funding of abortion. And that is the true purpose of this ballot measure. So they can use taxpayer money to pay for abortions across Colorado. That is the sole purpose of this amendment from my perspective, and why it's getting $5 million from these big time donors from these big left-wing dark money people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely disgusting that they're trying to pull this on Colorado voters.
It is. It is. I mean, it's absolutely so deceptive. See these commercials and people talk about abortion this and abortion that, but they never tell you in the ads that what you're doing is making it so that some of your money that you work so hard for, that the government takes from you by force, is going to be used for this abortion schemes. And who's going to make that money? It's going to be groups like that are tied to the Democratic Party, of course. All these pro-abortion centers have huge connections to people within the Democratic Party, and they're going to financially benefit from Amendment 79.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else to say on this one there, Michael?
I think we've covered this one pretty well. I think I've said it all.
Yeah, I never expected to spend this much time on it, but there's just so much material there. It's just so
Yeah,
interesting to really kind of look behind the scenes of why is this happening? Why is this on our ballot? And where's the money coming from to push this through? It's absolutely wild.
for sure. For sure. Yeah.
So moving on to another slightly controversial bill, I'd say, or amendment. It's also a citizen initiative led by Advanced Colorado's Michael Fields, Christy Burton Brown, etc. Amendment 80, constitutional right to school choice. Before we dig into the details, what are your thoughts on this one, Michael?
I love school choice. There's a little bit of language in here that is a sticking point for me, but I really love 95% of this. And that 95% is, I think, really critical, but I love 95% of this. So that's where I'm at on this one. I don't want to explain too much because I know I want to let you explain the whole thing. But yeah, there's one little sticky part with this one that um I have a problem with, but school choice is incredibly important. It's huge for parental rights. Parental rights are a huge thing. Um, I live in Jefferson County, and Jeffco schools are notoriously terrible. Me and my wife would rather move out of state than send our son to Jefferson County Public Schools. We'll do absolutely anything we can before we send him to Jefferson County Schools because of how much of a train wreck they are and the way they're harming kids. I've got so many friends that I never thought would ever homeschool, and they're consistently homeschooling. More and more people I know every single year talking about either talking about getting ready to homeschool or they've already started homeschooling. And I grew up as somebody who hated homeschooling, and now we're doing it because of how bad Jefferson County schools are.
Yeah, it's frightening. These articles, the news that we hear out of Jefferson County and other school districts across the state. I mean, what they're doing to these children, how they're turning them against their parents, getting in the way of the family relationships. I mean, the abuse, the drug use, the violence, all these things that kids are experiencing now, possibly more than ever before. Hard to really say that one way or the other, but it just seems so. It seems like an epidemic of mental health crisis, of all these different problems that are happening at the public government school level. So, I think school choice is a winning nonpartisan issue. I really do believe that kind of we're at that point in our society where most people on all sides of the political spectrum would support giving children better educational opportunities, providing better opportunities for kids. Nobody's against that. Except for the teachers unions, of course, the
Yes.
people who benefit financially from government schools. But there's a little bit of controversy here, and let's get into why.
Hmm.
So the actual language reads, quote, "The people of the state of Colorado hereby find and declare that all children have the right to equal opportunity to access a quality education, that parents have the right to direct the education of their children, and that school choice includes neighborhood, charter, private, and home schools, open enrollment options, and future innovations in education. Each K through 12 child has the right to school choice." Now, Michael, what's wrong with that?
Each child, that's my problem. Each child has the right to school choice. Children can't really consent, so it should say each parent has the right to school choice. Because it says child and not parent, that's going to cause a lot of sticky issues. And it's going to create a lot of situations that are going to give kids power where they don't necessarily have power or should have power because they can make the wrong decisions for themselves. The human brains is not fully developed until about 25, I believe. So parents are an incredibly important tool for the success of a child, and they need to have as much power as they possibly can to make the best decision for their kids. Nobody's going to love and care for a child than a parent. The state's never going to do it as much as they want to tell you they will love the kid. They will not because the kid is only an opportunity to be used and exploited by the state. So that's
Well
my
said.
problem with this. So thanks.
Yeah, well said. Great point. I mean, that's definitely a concern. Colorado Union of Taxpayers also had a concern about it. They sent out this email on September 3rd. I copied the text of it here to put what they said because they're a great group. Colorado Union of Taxpayers is so good. We use them a lot during our legislative updates every week. Really good information. Great group of people that in that organization, including Kim Munson, who's just definitely a leader here in Colorado. But they're against this. They're against this amendment, and they say because it is poorly written and ambiguous. They say Coloradans should not add amendments to our Constitution that are ambiguous. And when it comes to our children, we must be specific. They say the initiative states, quote, "All children have the right to equal opportunity to access a quality education, that parents have the right to direct the education of their children," end quote. This language seems to create potential legal conflicts between the child. Does a second grader have the right to determine his or her equal opportunity to access a quality education, and the right of parents to direct the education of their children? We also ask who determines the definition of a quality education. So, of course, that last line too, people are very concerned that homeschools, other types of non-governmental schools are going to be opened up to more regulation because of this amendment. So, Colorado Union of Taxpayers, there's the writer, former journalist Ari Armstrong, who wrote this article in Complete Colorado, linked here. He says that it could potentially undermine school choice in Colorado in important ways, depending on how lawmakers write in enacting legislation, how the school districts interpret it, and how courts decide the inevitable legal battles. So I understand those concerns. The state and these authoritarians, these people tied so closely to the teachers' unions and these government schools are going to do everything they can to try and manipulate the language in this, try and reinterpret in their own perspective to attack school choice. Of course, that's their goal. But nonetheless, my thought process is The state doesn't need this amendment to interfere with non-government schools. They already do it. There's homeschool regulations. There's restrictions on charter schools. There's a lot of control the state already exerts over these non-governmental schooling options. I don't think Amendment 80 is necessarily going to give them more opportunity to do so overall. I think it's worth the risk. I think school choice, chipping away, it's not a perfect amendment, but chipping away at this governmental monopoly over education, I think is a worthy goal. And yeah, it's going to be fought out in the courts, but the intention is clear. The intention of the amendment is clear, and I think the courts will recognize that. What are your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably right now, and my vote could change between now and the time I fill out my ballot. But right now, I think I'm like a 51-49 yes vote on this because I do think school choice is extremely important, and we need to do more in this state, and we need to give parents more options to raise their child or children in the way they see fit. So, um, I'm probably a yes vote on this one, but there's a chance I switch and say no because, as I stated before, that last little bit of language really concerns me. So, um, I know that we've done, and it's not only because of schools, because of this, but because of precedent in the state legislature as well, particularly 1039, the way they want to say children have the right to choose their name, the non which 1039, by the way, is the non-legal name changes bill, and some of the other things that they've tried to do, and not only in schools, but like the recent foster parent decisions, and basically trying to force compliance with foster families to adhere to the specific worldview that the Colorado legislature chooses for them. So there's a lot of real concerns that I have with what could come as unintended consequences, but we need as many possible options to raise our kids in the manner that is best for the children. And right now there's a lot of places in Colorado that are not offering that best choice for the kids.
Yeah, definitely share a lot of the concern, a lot of the hesitation. That's why I wanted to really include, these people, the people who oppose this initiative. I wanted to include their opinions and perspectives so people can kind of hear the different sides of this. Because ultimately, we all want, on the pro-liberty side here in Colorado and the liberty community, we all want school choice. We want better options. We want to get kids away from this government monopoly that does cause so much harm to people and families across our state. So yeah, I think it's not perfect, but it's definitely worth the risk, in my opinion. And I think it's moving in the right direction. It's not perfect, but hey, we take what we can get, we fight where we can win, and it's a real winning issue, I think.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So, Proposition JJ, this one is a little less controversial for people of our perspective. Retain additional sports betting revenue. So basically, sports betting, if people didn't know, was legalized here in Colorado back in 2019. Voters approved Proposition DD. In that specific proposition, the state was only allowed to collect up to $29 million in sports betting taxes per year. The legislature, of course, wants more of that money. So they put this on the ballot this year, referred it to the voters. They want to override that and just keep as much money as possible. So, greedy politicians in our state legislature are trying to take more and more of our tax money. What do you think about this one, Michael?
I think this is a pretty clear cut no. I mean, taxation is theft at the end of the day. I mean, that's where we see it from a liberty perspective, and they want to take even more of your money. Absolutely not. So I'm a no
Here,
vote.
here, here, here. Yeah, no vote. No votes all around. Another one that I'm sure we'll agree with pretty quick. Proposition KK, the firearms and ammunition excise tax. Our horrible anti-gun authoritarian legislators put this on the ballot this year with House Bill 1349. It's a 6.5% tax on the purchase of, quote, a firearm precursor part, or ammunition in Colorado. Uh, I really wanted to list the sponsors of the bill here. These are not just the people who voted for the bill, but the legislators who signed on to their name to put it on there and say they proudly sponsor this legislation to make it harder for people to defend themselves, to punish low-income Coloradans and working-class Coloradans by making it more difficult for them to be armed. Of course, though, extreme wealthy people in society are not going to be as affected by this. It's extremely regressive, and bad news. What do you think, Michael?
Oh, this one's absolutely this is an absolutely trash bill. It almost didn't pass, didn't hit committee. But you've got gaslighters in the legislature, particularly the House, that really put the screws to um, Kyle Mullica. He was really somebody who didn't like it, but they guilted him and bullied him into this by saying if you by trying to go online and say that Kyle Mullica hates women and women who are being abused. Uh, because this is supposed to quote unquote fund like abuse shelters for abused women and stuff like that, which are fantastic organizations to have. They just should be funded in different ways. We shouldn't be relying on stolen money from the people to do that. They should be given, we should be, if anything, we should be trying to fundraise and try to emphasize the needs and bring awareness to these different communities and these shelters so people understand how critical they are instead of trying to punish gun owners because they like to shoot, they like to protect, they feel this is the need to protect themselves and their family members from awful human beings. Remember what's going on in Colorado right now, all the violence that's going on, and then the left will come and gaslight. I mean, I don't have a chart in front of me, but basically violent crime skyrockets and then goes down just a little bit and then they turn around and look at that tiny little decrease of like 5% when it skyrocketed 30-40% and then say, what are you talking about? Violent crime is going down in our state. How dare you? What you're actually doing is gaslighting the people of Colorado. So I've got a real problem with this. There's real problem with gaslighting, particularly with Lorena Garcia. She's an awful human being, and she might be at the top of my list for disgusting people in the state legislature right now. There's a lot of really bad ones, but she's right up there competing for the top. So watch out for her. She's got a lot of doozies. I've recorded a couple other things she said, particularly on gun violence. At one point in time, she actually said that it was, I believe, a form of white supremacy for a man to want to protect his family with a gun, which is absolutely insane. But that's Lorena Garcia. So, yeah, this one's got to be a no vote, and we got to if and I'm just shocked that Kyle Mullica lasted as long as he did before he finally said no and cut a deal. So,
Yeah, no, it's these people have lost so much legitimacy. They're trying to infringe upon our rights. They're wrong. They're on the wrong side of history, attacking people for trying to exercise their right to defend themselves and their families, to own the means in order to do so. It's absolutely disgusting.
yep. Mm-hmm.
What do you think about this one? I've heard a lot of mixed things. Proposition 127, prohibit bobcat, lynx, and mountain lion hunting. Cats aren't
Th
trophies. Yeah, go for it.
this is the Boulder, Denver metro area trying to impose its will on the rural communities of Colorado at the expense of the rural communities of Colorado. We did this with wolves, and we're seeing what's going on with that, and they want to do it again. We've learned our lesson once. I really hope the people of Colorado uh, look at what's going on with the wolves and say, okay, we should not do that. Wolves, the good thing about wolves, I'll give them credit, is they try to kind of stay to themselves. You can get attacked, but mountain lions, they really love to attack people. So this, they see you as prey. Um, I honestly believe people are going to die if this gets passed, and I know that sounds super hyperbolic, and a lot of people say people will die. But literally, these animals are predators. They are apex predators of the Rocky Mountains. And if you're out hiking in the forest and that thing is hungry, guess what? You're probably not going to survive because that thing is going to hide and it's going to hunt you down, and next thing you know, you are gone. So be very careful with what you do, Colorado, because people will be harmed by your virtue signals.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, 100%. I got to say, in my mind, hunting animals, it's part of the Colorado lifestyle. It's this idea of this Western frontier independence, this mindset that we have here in the Western United States. And these anti-hunting activists, they're not going to stop, right? They want to ban all hunting. They really want to shut down this idea. I mean, you can see where a lot of this money is coming from, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Washington, D.C., Boulder, of course, Telluride. It's like big money coming from out of state, coming to Colorado to try and attack our way of life, which is to shut down hunting, to attack meat. I mean, we see this a lot. So I really hope people vote no on this one. Uh, Not feeling great that this is going to go the right way, but unfortunately, I know we got to do what we can to get the word out.
Yep.
All right, moving on here. Just a couple left. Proposition 128, parole eligibility for crimes of violence. So this is another citizen-led initiative by Advance Colorado, making another crime bill or another crime initiative proposition here this time because of course, life has gotten more difficult. Like you said, crime has skyrocketed. We have district attorneys, letting violent criminals back on the streets. We have people committing horrendous crimes. So the idea behind this legislation here, or this initiative, is to keep people in jail longer. So the specific people they want to put into jail is convicted murderers, rapists, kidnappers, arsonists, burglars, other violent criminals will spend more time in jail. And if they're repeat criminals, they'll also be penalized. So they'll spend even more time in jail. So it's basically requiring longer jail sentences for people who are violent. Violent criminals are convicted, found guilty in a court of law of property crime. So, I don't think it's necessarily the best way to solve our criminal problem. I would have to say that, enshrining the right of individuals to defend themselves at their businesses and empowering citizens by strengthening legal protections for armed self-defense is probably, in my perspective, a better way to do it. But nonetheless, this rising crime that we're seeing, all this, anything we can do to get these violent criminals off the street and put them in jail longer is probably a good thing.
Absolutely. I mean, earlier we mentioned the non-aggression principle, aka the NAP. Um, what they're talking about is non-violent crimes. I mean, something somebody doesn't necessarily like let's say, for example, I call you a bad word, like hate, what they call a hate crime these days. That's not an actual crime. I might offend you. We may not be friends when I say that, but you shouldn't go to jail for something like that. That's the definition of like a nonviolent crime. A violent crime, obviously, it's going to be, theft, fraud, something like that, where you're taking somebody else's property, something like that. That is absolutely something that should be punished. Murder, rape, arson. Um, those are the types of things. Fraud. Those are the things that definitely need to be punished. Um, we do have a society and we do have some individuals that are not going to care about you. We can't have a completely lawless society, and we need to do something. And as much as I would love to see people walk the streets as possible, if you're a violent criminal, you need to learn your lesson. You need to be punished. We need to see that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I completely stand with you. Empowering individuals to protect themselves, protect them's families, protect their property, protect their business. That would definitely be a better approach, but this is definitely something in the right direction, and we need to do something in Colorado because we definitely don't want to turn into California as much as some people would love that to happen. Be the case.
Definitely agree. Yeah, and we see the legislature, we see city councils, we see DAs, all these people being soft on crime, kind of creating this anarcho tyranny, if you will. So they're leaving it. It's up to the citizens now to really push back against our state government and say, hey, listen, no, we got to do something about these violent criminals, lock them up, keep them locked up, let people live their lives peacefully. So yeah, there we go. Perfect. Moving on to Proposition 129, establishing veterinary professional associates. So this was from the Dumb Friends League. They're ones behind this. They want to create a new regulated profession that the state recognizes to provide licensed veterinary medicine. So they say there's a shortage of veterinary professionals. So they want to basically create a new position, a new licensed position here, to allow more people to work in the veterinary field. Uh, you know, what do you think, Michael?
I think it's pretty counterproductive. Getting the government to step in and take care of a problem by making it even harder is only going to exacerbate the problem they're seeing already. So I am not a fan of what they're attempting to do with this law
Well, I mean, to be
or
fair,
initiative. Hmm?
yeah, no, to be fair, they would create a new position that doesn't have the same requirements of the veterinary professionals, this higher position. So it creates kind of a lower position. So people think of like RNs and CNAs, like nurses. It's creating a new position there that's going to allow uh, less qualifications needed to get this new licensure to be practicing veterinary medicine. So they're making it easier in a way for people to get into the field, to get into the market here. So, just to point that out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think they could go about it in a different way. I don't think they're really going to solve the problem at the end of the day. They just need to ease some of these laws so that way more people can have access, and that way they don't have to spend additional money on licenses. And at the end of the day, tell the government, let the government into something that doesn't necessarily need to be regulated in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I'm right there with you. That's why Free State Colorado is neutral in this proposition, excuse me, because deregulate the market, get rid of these licensing laws. We've even seen our governor tweet about how bad licensing laws are. I said they're a detriment to the market. They should be abolished. Let people hire who they want. And if you want to go to a vet for your dog or your animal that has a certain level of qualifications, well, that's up to you. It shouldn't be the government in the middle of this deciding who can and can't provide medicine or healthcare to animals. I mean, let anybody do it, whoever wants to, and then let the market decide, let individuals make those choices. So that's why Free State Colorado is neutral on this one.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, we're almost there. Proposition 130, funding for law enforcement. So here we go with Advanced Colorado again, addressing that crime issue. Direct the General Assembly, so that's our Colorado State Legislature, to make a one-time $350 million appropriation to this newly created Peace Officer Training and Support Fund. So they'd give that money out to rural communities, to different municipalities and places all across the state. And then also, it would create this ongoing $1 million death benefit for families of fallen law enforcement officers. So I wrote in here that it'll be interesting to see how the public supports law enforcement. I expect this to pass. Um, it'll be interesting to see how this happens. But what do you think, Michael?
I like the idea of taking care of police funding in a way that promotes training. I think that's important. You see a lot of, I mean, and here's the thing about being a police officer. From a liberty perspective, a lot of people are very anti-police. Then you've also got a lot of people, particularly on the right side of the aisle, that are extremely pro police, if not put them in a higher citizenry category than regular people because they will risk their life for you. When we have a problem and some violent criminals coming, who are we going to call? We call the cops, because we know at the end of the day they are probably going to protect us. That being said, there are some Supreme Court cases that have come out that said that they won't. So, I mean, it's a very nuanced position. Policing in America is a very, very nuanced position, and everybody has a lot of but it's also a very hot button issue, so nothing really gets done about it. Um, and people aren't willing to have the conversation. But one thing that is true is we need more training for police officers. Um, there could be a free market approach to policing that people don't really want to consider. Uh, you could have contractors come in, and that could be an issue. And those contractors could come into the city, into your cities, and run off on a contract, and if they don't perform up to standard, they can lose their contract, and another contracted policing company agency could come in and do the job, creating more competition, creating better policing standards through the free market. That would be an approach. Um, so I'm not necessarily pro or against this one, particularly when it comes to the cost. I kind of balk at the cost of this thing. Um, but I definitely see a lot of good, and I think this does come from a good place. Um, I might I might say this thing needs revision before I could fully support it, but I'm not fully against it either. So I'm with you and I have a new I take it I have a neutral stance on this one.
Yeah, I not I Free State Colorado doesn't oppose it because there's no increase in taxes, there's no new taxes. Um, you know, it's maybe valuable to certain avenues, to certain police departments that need the money. Maybe some others don't need the money. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, of course, you're leaving it up to the state legislature in a lot of case of when they're going to give the money, how they're going to disperse it, that kind of thing. So, do you really trust our state legislature to be fair and to do the right thing here? I don't know. Neutral, not really sold on the idea necessarily. I think there's not a net pro liberty benefit to it, which is kind of the idea behind this libertarian guide, right? We're talking from a libertarian perspective. So, yeah, Free State Colorado's neutral.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, if there was a way to really allow for a lot of liberty-minded police enforcement, I mean, that might change my position on this thing as well. But really, it's just about basic training, which is also important for the police. But because we see issues like Elijah McClain, I mean, say what you want, but I mean, you can say the police did not necessarily handle that case appropriately. I don't want to sit there and say that the police were all bad in that situation, but I also don't want to say that they didn't. I mean, I still don't necessarily think that they handled themselves in a way that deserved for the kid to die. So, um, and I bring that example up just because that happened in Aurora.
Right. Right. So last one here. Thank you everybody for bearing with us here. Hopefully you get some valuable information here helping you make that decision. Of course, you can read this ballot guide, freestatecolorado.com/2024-ballot. So this is Proposition 131, a citizen-led initiative here. Kent Theory, a very wealthy individual who's been playing with Colorado's political system for a long time. Kent Theory is behind the open primaries that Colorado currently has. He really had a lot of ideas about how to change Colorado's election law. You can look on the Secretary of State's website to see all of the initiatives they were trying to put through and then seeing which ones stuck. I mean, this guy hired this law firm. They spent tons of money doing this. So they wanted to, some of the things they kind of thought about supporting this year was prohibiting vacancy committees in the General Assembly, eliminating party nominations. So they completely kind of getting political parties out of the process of getting people on the ballot, petition only access to the primary ballot, timely reporting of election results. So, I mean, Ken Theory and his allies there want to fundamentally change Colorado's elections. And this isn't just happening in Colorado, this is happening all over the country. So, very interesting to see these groups. Definitely, there's a bigger story here than I think is what has been reported. So, it'll be interesting to dig into that in the future. But what Proposition 131 would do, it really has two parts, which is kind of surprising because there's a single subject requirement. These initiatives, these propositions should really only have one primary change in law. This has two changes. Now, of course, they're tied together, so I guess that's how they get away with it. The Colorado Title Board let it go through for whatever reason. But nonetheless, there's two parts to it: a all candidate open primary and ranked choice voting in the general. I start off here just saying that, really, we could talk about ranked choice voting if you want, and maybe we touch on it. But the first part of this initiative here, the open primary portion of the measure, should be opposed. And Free State Colorado opposes that, and that's why there's a no vote. Without even getting into the ranked choice voting, everybody's trying to make this about ranked choice voting. They say, "Oh, what about ranked choice voting?" Well, it's the all candidate open primary. I think is the bigger problem. Michael, what do you think?
I completely agree. I mean, jungle prime this is essentially what they call jungle primaries, and that's California. I mean, by the time we get to this law would allow the top four winners, regardless of party, to advance to the general election. And at that point, I mean, you're just going to have the most extreme candidates win. So think about how many of these crazies from Denver are going to, and Denver and Boulder are going to be able to win, get past the primary elections, and then advance to the state capital. And then we're going to have to deal with more and more candidates like Elizabeth Epps and Tim Hernandez and Lorena, and there's a chance that they might make Lorena Garcia look like a moderate. So that's the thing that's concerning about me, is the amount of options that are going to pass through are going to just change Colorado in a direction that's even more concerning than it already is. Additionally, another thing that bothers me is it ends parties. Political parties are not going to be anything that people need to be a part of anymore. I mean, because what's the point of being a part of a political party if all four candidates in the general election are Democrats or they're all Republicans? You're eliminating you're eliminating the ability to choose the type of person you want to actually represent you in the general election.
Right. I'd say the primary point from Free State Colorado, and really in my mind, the what should be the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, any of these other political parties out there, is because this open primary system would restrict ballot access for the general election. So, for years, Colorado has had great ballot access laws. So, somebody who's a Libertarian Party candidate running for governor can get on the ballot through a nomination at the party convention. And that's it. I mean, it's relatively easy. File the paperwork with the Secretary of State, and you're on the ballot for all of Colorado to vote for. This would change that. Now, you'd still have the Libertarian Party of Colorado would be able to place a candidate on the primary ballot. So they'd say, hey, here's our primary candidate for governor, or you could have more than one. Here's all our primary candidates for governor. They can get on that ballot for the primary, this open primary, and they've been on the same ballot as every other candidate for that race. So every governor candidate, Senate candidate, state representative candidate would all be listed together, and then those top four would go to the general. So yeah, like you said, you could end up in a situation where you have only two, maybe you have three Democrats and one Republican, or you have all Democrats, or you have just two Democrats and two Republicans in the general. The Libertarian candidate's not going to have a chance to get through that general election. They'll only be on that primary ballot. So, it's going to make it a lot harder for third parties to get candidates on these top ticket races into the general election, from my perspective. Um, so that's kind of the main part of it. I think in the short term, because Kent Theory, and I know that's part of his plan, is to totally eliminate political parties, right? As we saw in one of the proposed initiatives. But I think for the time being, this would entrench the two parties. People complain about the two-party system. People are not satisfied with the Democrats and the Republicans, and this could potentially further entrench them and prevent anyone else from getting on that November ballot. So, I mean, that's a massive issue with it, with the primary portion of this, in my perspective.
You know, 20 some years ago, McCain Feingold came out, and and basically what McCain Feingold is it's a campaign finance reform bill that was passed to drastically change the way elections in this country are ran, and particularly the amount of money that goes into these elections. And it honestly had, when you look at how everything kind of shook out, it made it way more harder to run, because you have to have so much more money, because instead of giving money to the party, you're now giving money to the 527s. And there's not a better example of that than Jared Polis here in Colorado, because of what he did with the blueprint. And we're going to see that and we're going to see something very similar happen here in Colorado if we allow Proposition 131 to pass, because we're going to fundamentally change Colorado elections for the worse, and in turn change our governments for the worse.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. And I think too, just to touch on that ranked choice voting in the general
Hmm.
election, it's complicated, it's confusing. If you fill out your ballot wrong, it gets thrown away. For some people, if they fill out their ballot and their candidates make it through the different rounds, they could have two, three, four votes throughout the entire, or maybe up to three votes to determine that winner. And other people, maybe their vote doesn't count at all, or it only counts for one of the candidates. So now all of a sudden you have somebody who has three votes to decide who's going to be the governor, and somebody else may only have one based on how this ranked choice voting works. That's one key component. And just think about how complicated it is. Think about, elderly people. Think about, senior citizens. They're going to have this entirely new system to vote, and they might not understand it. They might just not vote. I mean, we'll probably see less people participating in the election, especially older people or people who don't speak English well or people who don't understand how this ranked choice voting works. So we're going to actually see people drop out of the political system, which means you're going to have more of those hardcore, diehard uh, activist types who are going to be voting and a lot more younger people. I don't know about you, Michael, but I don't necessarily like the idea of more younger people voting and less older people voting. I can see that moving us in kind of that wrong direction because you lose all that wisdom and life experience of people who maybe are confused by the choice voting piece. I think there's a lot of problems with this. There's a lot of reasons to oppose it. I definitely encourage people to check out my video with Candace Stutzream here. You can find it at Free State, Colorado, where we go over a lot of the different parts of it. It's complicated. I just rewatched that video and I was like, wow, I got a couple of things wrong during the video because it's so complicated. I was like, oh my gosh, I misunderstood this, misunderstood that, but I still think there's a lot of good information there. And you see all of this money, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars being poured into it. um, these different activist types. You could look into who Unite America is. This Charles Whelan guy, who's an author, what Camp Theory's been behind. Ben Walton is a Walmart heir. Catherine Murdoch, the daughter-in-law of Rupert Murdoch, she's on the board of Unite America. Wilmot Reed Hastings, the co-founder of Netflix, he's a mega donor for Kamala Harris. He's behind this. He's Wilmot Reed Hastings. We can see here from Tracer has put $500,000 on this. $500,000. You know multiple times he's listed on here. I mean, how crazy is that you have this guy who started Netflix? He's a mega donor for Kamala Harris, and he's pumping $500,000 to change Colorado election law. I mean, if that doesn't make people suspicious or concerned about this, we have these out-of-state people with lots of money, the Murdoch family. Like, who trusts them to try and have what's in the best interest of Colorado, right? Like, these people are not
Yeah.
looking out for us. They're trying to fundamentally change how our country operates. And I would be very concerned and say, I don't trust these people and their plans for what they're trying to do. I 100% without hesitation encourage people to vote no on Proposition 131. It'll be interesting to see the new gamesmanship and the all the new political consulting that's going to go, more dark money coming in, all these new strategies coming in. It's going to complicate elections to the point where it's going to be harder, I think, for the average person to participate in our political system if this passes.
I agree. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this. As legislative director for the Libertarian Party of Colorado, if this thing does not pass, I don't know how the Libertarian Party of Colorado can really survive long term, because what's going to be the point of even being in a third party or a minor party at this point? Because you might as well just go be a Republican or a Democrat if you're going to even run at all, because this is going to completely disincentivize anybody from even joining a third party or a minor party.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. It's very concerning for the Libertarian Party, for other people out there who are maybe dissatisfied with the Democrats and the Republicans. So,
Hmm.
well, Michael, I think we went a little longer than expected, but not surprised, I guess. With there's so much information to cover, hopefully people find it useful. Find this information. There's links to everything we talked about at freestatecolorado.com. Just look for this Libertarian Guide to the Ballot Measures. Really look forward to maybe we do an analysis after the election and kind of dig in and look at some of the voting results and the money and this and that. Get some of those final figures. That could be a lot of fun. But anything else, Michael, before we cut it off here?
Just make sure you talk to your friends and family about voting if they live in Colorado, and if you can, take their if you know somebody on the fence, let them know you're willing, talk them through the election, tell them why it's important to vote for these measures, vote on these measures, and do tell them you'll do them a favor and take your ballot for them. and drop it off. So that's all I got.
Perfect, sir. Well, really appreciate you spending the time with me to go through this. I appreciate your perspective. Look forward to talking to you further. I'm sure, depending on the results of this November election here in 2024, we'll see how the makeup of the state legislature is in 2025, and I'm sure we'll have some fun looking at the bills, analyzing the new legislators, and kind of seeing what opportunities they are to advance liberty here in our great state.
Absolutely. Let's hope the legislature is a little bit more even and we can get some more pro-liberty perspectives in the legislature this year.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Michael. Appreciate you, and take care.
Hey, thanks, Brandon.